I'm Joe Lamp'l. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a greener world, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. About 3 years ago, my family and I moved back to Atlanta. When this house was on the market, one of the biggest drawbacks to potential buyers was the landscape, or lack of it in this case. It was completely overgrown. You couldn't even see the house from a few feet away in most places. To most people, that would be a deal breaker. But to me, with a background in landscape design, I saw potential. I just wasn't expecting it to take this long to get it ready for planting. But here we are 3 years later, and I have some special help. Brie Arthur's background in horticulture is vast, and two of her strongest suits are in plant propagation and landscape design. So Brie, you and I both have a landscape design background, and yet you still have an active practice. So lots of clients that keep you really busy. So I'm going to be your client today, for argument's sake. What's the process that you take your clients through? What's the first thing that happens?
Well, the most important thing is to understand what they're trying to achieve with this landscape design. Give them a great questionnaire, figure out what their maintenance needs are, what they're trying to achieve, ultimately, what their goal is with this landscape.
Yeah, goals and objectives, very important. I have a long list myself. I'd say the top 3 things for me, first of all, it needs to be a wildlife and pollinator magnet. I really want this to be animal friendly for pets and the wildlife that comes to visit.
Great, so we'll choose native plants
Yep.
that are great sources for pollen, color seasonally, and of course, some evergreens.
Yeah, and the evergreens, not only are they beautiful, but I also love the functionality in that they're going to provide me some more privacy, because in my exuberance to clear this place out of all the scrub plants to get it ready for planting, I went a little far. So now I need to find that happy medium and add back some great plants. Conifers would be a great choice.
Conifers and evergreen, or broadleaf evergreens, really do provide the screening that landscapes need and some visual interest through the winter.
Definitely. Number 3 on my list would be that I need it to look completely natural. So we're going to put a lot of thought into this to make it look natural.
We are. What we'll do is use swaths of plants, odd numbers, make it look as if it was here, though it certainly wasn't.
Right? Yep, that'll be great. One of the first questions that inevitably comes to mind before you've even started a landscape design is, when will it be done? We all want instant gratification and to get that gorgeous finished product. But doing it right takes a little longer, especially if you're starting from scratch with your design. The answer on when will it be done is different for everyone in every situation. What about you? When you're working with a client, what sort of time frame are they typically working under?
Well, generally we do a master plan, and then they focus on the areas that they want to get started with and do it in phases.
Yep. Smart for a lot of reasons.
That's right. It's certainly economical,
Yes.
but it also gives them the opportunity to understand the maintenance so that they have a successful landscape.
You know, taking time is so important. I'm a huge advocate of living your property for at least a year so that you have experienced all 4 seasons, because you don't know it all in just a matter of months. You really have to see, where the water is flowing, where are those wet spots and where are those dry spots, and it just takes time to learn all that.
Well, that's true. Of course, soil and drainage are pretty easily manipulated in a landscape.
Yeah.
One of the more critical points is understanding seasonal light.
Yeah.
That changes dramatically from winter to summer,
Yeah.
and it has a big impact on the plant material that you can use.
But there's a fine line. While living with your yard for a year lets you see all the seasons before embarking on a landscape design, don't let that observation period turn into never getting around to planting at all. That's one of the things that all of us with design experience have seen time and time again. I think one of the biggest mistakes that homeowners make in the landscape is by not planting something just because they're unsure whether or not it goes there. The worst case scenario is that it dies. And really, I don't think you're a gardener until you kill a few plants, right? And the only way you do that is to just give it a try. Plants aren't a huge investment to replace. I mean, and if that's the worst case scenario, so be it. But you learn so much in the process by planning it and observing the cause and effect of your actions.
I think you learn more from your mistakes than your successes,
Totally,
right?
right. And it's not a mistake if you learn from it and you take action accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely.
For Brie and me, the process started with that first walk around my property, me telling her about my goals for the landscape and giving her the lowdown on some of the yard's quirks and patterns, and her offering suggestions early on from her perspective. But it's all hypothetical at this early stage. There are some other important things that absolutely need to happen to facilitate the design process and bring the grand vision into better focus. First, get a survey that shows actual tree locations. This is not part of what's on a typical survey you get when you buy your house, but you can have a survey company do this work for you, or you can take the measurements and add them to an existing survey. I had a new survey done just for this purpose. It's what allowed Brie to get exact dimensions for drawing our plan remotely. And that scale drawing is one of the true keys to success in executing good landscape design.
For homeowners, starting with a scaled drawing will really give them the insight to be able to plant things in appropriate spacing. And that's really the most important thing. If you buy plants that are small, it's easy to overplant, and then just a few years down the line, you're actually having to remove plants. It's a lot of maintenance that's unnecessary.
Our landscape has 4 main areas. The bed by the road needs lots of privacy screening. Another bed between it and the house will mirror some of those same plant choices and incorporate several highly ornamental blueberry plants. Integrating edibles into the landscape is a favorite design strategy for Brie.
When you have an ornamental landscape, that tends to be static. You don't interact in it, you're not really pulling from it. When you incorporate just a few edibles that you enjoy, that you use in your culinary adventures in your kitchen, you get to interact in your landscape and make it feel like it's part of your everyday.
The third area is a bed that includes our honeybee hives. Here, our focus is on providing an attractive variety of native plants that offer a succession of convenient food sources through flower and fruit in every season. The foundation bed is the fourth area in need of attention. It's getting a balance of trees and shrubs to add vertical interest, temper the stark walls and deck area, and provide a base of evergreen and deciduous foundation plantings to soften the overall look. While each area had unique objectives, overall most of the plants and trees we chose are natives, since one of the main goals is to attract more wildlife, especially birds and pollinators. Another important benefit of using native plants is once established, they won't require supplemental irrigation, a key goal for conserving natural resources. Before beginning any landscaping project, part of the job is getting ready for it. And besides clearing the way as I've been doing, here are a few key things for your consideration, starting with first things first. Call before you dig, no matter how big or small your project. Utility lines need to be marked for each separate project, from installing a mailbox, putting up a fence, building a deck, or planting trees. And don't make assumptions. Even if you've hired a contractor, make sure the contractor contacted 811 to have lines marked. Every digging project requires a call to 811. It's the same number for every state, and many states even offer this service online. A quick check to call811.com is a great place to start. By calling 2 to 3 business days prior to digging, utility companies will be notified of the intent to dig and gives them time to mark the appropriate lines. Each utility company will send a professional locate technician to the digging site. Once there, the technicians will identify and mark the appropriate location of the underground lines using small flags and paint. Specific colors are used to designate specific underground utility lines, according to a uniform color code. In the event you see obvious signs or know of underground utilities in your area, but no paint or flags, it is not safe to begin your project. There may be a reason your underground lines couldn't be marked. Perhaps your dog was being aggressive and the locate tech was unable to access the property. But be sure you've given affected utility companies the time to respond to locate their underground lines. The time frame varies by state, but it's important to understand the significance of waiting for all the underground lines in your project area to be marked. Nationwide, an underground utility line is damaged every 6 minutes because somebody started digging before they called 811. But hitting an underground utility line while digging can lead to serious injury. It can result in entire neighborhood outages, and it can even lead to fines and repair costs. But once all those utility companies have responded to your request to identify and mark those underground lines, dig with care. Another consideration for a smooth project is to allow plenty of time to get your prep work done. It's perhaps the least exciting of the landscaping process, but just remember, it's necessary work to pave the way for exciting things ahead. For me, a new pathway to the front door required the removal of the old walkway. If you're working with a company that supplies their own crew and equipment, you can sit back and watch. But as a way to keep costs down, I'm doing much of the project myself, including this demolition. Almost any piece of the heavy equipment can be rented by the day, but that doesn't always make a job like this easy.
Well, pretty much finished. That was hard. About 8 hours to pull out all the concrete after about 8 hours of breaking it up. Thank God for the bucket and the tractor, because doing this by hand, which I tried to do first, is ridiculous. It just wore me out.
With a site that's now cleared and marked, it was time to make some new bed lines. It's a simple way to freshen up old beds and make room for more plants. Now for me, I like those long curved lines. It's a nice way for me to infuse my personal style into the overall look of the plan. And I also think curved casual lines, well, that's more appropriate for a farmhouse setting. But you could do straight lines. That just to me says more of a formal look. But no matter how you do it, creating those lines is a lot easier than you think. Here are the steps to make that happen. The first step in creating your bed lines is to lay them out with something changeable before you commit. For me, a hose is the best and most forgiving option to tweak the line until you have just what you want. Next, use landscaping paint to spray along the hose line. This will serve as your guide for digging and gets the hose out of the way. Using a sharp spade or edging tool, cut into the ground along the paint line. You'll also need to remove the excess soil to create that visual separation and sharp-looking edge. Finally, it's always a good idea to add mulch to give your new bed lines a clean, finished look.
So another project that I'm taking on while everyone else is resting up for the big install is to move this Japanese maple. It is a beautiful specimen, and it's looked nice where it is, but where it needs to be is not here. With the new plan, that's just out of place. It just doesn't work. So in order to save it, I have to carefully dig it up. And so that's what I've been working on a little bit every day, starting with trenching around the drip line to get down as much as I can. So when I lift this, hopefully with the tractor forks, I'll pull up as many of the roots as possible. Those feeder roots are really important, and the more of those that I can get, the better off this tree has is for a chance to survive in its new home.
But on the day of the move, a good friend who knows his way around a track loader was help I just couldn't pass up.
Okay, this is making me a little nervous, even though I've been doing, landscaping projects for years and years. To see, a beautiful tree that's been there a long time getting uprooted always makes me a little bit nervous. But my buddy Mark Nix is on the job, and he's done a lot of work around here. I know he knows what he's doing, so we're doing the best we can to get this beautiful Japanese maple out of here.
Even with professional machinery, it's a painstaking task, but well worth it when compared to the cost of buying a new tree this size, and simply losing this one to careless efforts would be inexcusable. Now, another consideration when you're designing your landscape and planning your install. If you're adding soil, you want to invest in the good stuff because you get what you pay for, so don't get the cheap fill dirt. Now, this is a place not far from where I live, and it's a blend of great soil mix, topsoil, compost, manure, granite dust for minerals, and peanut hulls as a filler, but it's all organic material and it's really excellent for the landscape. I use quality soil like this landscape mix anytime I need to expand my planting area or add contours to beds. That way I'm assured that whatever I'm planting is getting a great foundation for success. As you finish up the prep work and installation day approaches, it's finally time to pick out your plants. A good designer will have suggestions that suit your new landscape's needs and saves you from having to make some tough choices at the local nursery, where you'll find a mind-boggling array of selections. Take it from me, showing self-restraint at this point in the process can be tough. Do as much homework ahead of time as you possibly can to feel comfortable in your plant choices. Know exactly what it is you're going after rather than trying to decide on the fly in the heat of the moment when you're seduced by all these beautiful plants and flowers in bloom. If you can do all of that ahead of time, you can take the emotion out of it, so when you're there at the nursery, you know what you're going for, and if they don't have it, you walk away until you find it. You'll be a lot happier in the process. If you're working with a designer, you can often visit a wholesale nursery or grower. The benefit for you? More instant impact in the landscape. Now, many home gardeners may not realize there's another option for sourcing your plants, a plant re-wholesaler.
So a re-wholesaler is similar to a garden center, except they don't have any of the bling. They really only carry plants. They were originally designed to be places that positioned all the plants for landscape contractors to be a one-stop shop. Instead of having to go to 5 different nurseries, they would all be collected in one place. They are available for homeowners, and you can pre-order plants through them. They're a wonderful resource.
The third option is to purchase directly from a tree farm. This one is typically only for the pros, but it allows your designer or contractor to hand-pick the perfect specimens right from where they were grown. Unlike container-grown trees, these have grown in the ground all their life. When purchased, the tree is dug with special equipment to extract a large root ball. It's then wrapped with burlap to contain the soil around the roots. These trees are huge and need heavy equipment just to unload them. But remember that supersizing your plants isn't always the best course of action. When designing a landscape, size matters, but biggest isn't always best. I think the one thing people don't think enough about when heading into a landscaping project is what the mature size of the tree or shrub is going to be, because all too often we're going for that instant gratification. We want that mature look right when we put the plants in the ground. That never works. Those plants are going to get a lot bigger. The information on the tag is what you go by for how it's going to be in roughly 10 years. So if you have the patience, give it the room that it needs. It's not only going to look better in the long run, but it's going to do better along the way. After 3 years of clearing and months of planning, the stage is now set for the new stars of the show, over 200 trees and shrubs in this phase of the installation alone. We sourced the best plants we could find from local and regional growers. Now that they've arrived, it's time to get them installed with the help of my crew from Autumn Hill Nursery. And one of the first things to go on the ground? Giant crepe myrtles. So yesterday morning, my crepe myrtles were in the ground at the tree farm. In the afternoon, a couple professionals helped me load them onto the trailer and the truck. Very carefully, they secured them properly, tied them up, and off we go. Now, it's always a white knuckle experience driving home, 20, 30 minutes with big trees in the back. But they're here and they're in great shape. And now they're about to go on the ground at my farm. Balled and burlap trees are harder to maneuver on site, and it's a bit trickier to establish, since unlike plants started and growing in containers, all the feeder roots have been cut off when it was dug from the ground. Digging a hole that is wide enough but not too deep is extremely important. You typically only get one chance to get it right. The final steps before easing it into the planting hole is to remove the wire basket and burlap. The tree is then checked for alignment, then soil is added and it's watered in. But it's not just the width and depth of the hole that matters. It's also about precise location to make sure you don't hit any of those pipes, wires, or cables that you had marked earlier. So whenever you're preparing to dig holes, no matter how small or big, it's always a great idea to get a sense of where those irrigation lines are and then mark them with flags at all the head points. And if you happen to know where the lines are, all the better, mark those with paint, which is what we did here, which is why we managed to get right up against that PVC pipe without causing any damage to it.
these guys are real pros.
Well, it's been about 6 weeks since the plants were installed and everything is settling in nicely as fall arrives. But to get the most out of your landscape, what you do now with those trees and shrubs going forward is every bit as important as any other part of the process. First, this part of the installation took place in fall, the absolute best time to plant because the soil is warm but the air is cooler. It's simply the best and kindest combination for the plants to settle in with minimal stress. Having said that, I've had to water every day for the first 3 weeks or so. It's been dry and warm here. These plants need plenty of water until those new roots start to spread into the native soil. But with rain and in time, typically several weeks, you can and should start to ease off on the frequency, as I now have. The goal is to get them to establishment, which usually takes at least a few months. Another critical step right after planting is to add mulch. It will greatly reduce the amount of water loss to evaporation, a key factor, especially with new plants. But it will also help keep the soil cooler near the surface. That's also really important for all the plants, especially new ones. If you can keep up with the watering right at the soil level and all around the drip line and add mulch, you're well on your way to having these plants established. Now, there's lots to do from this point forward, but just getting here when it comes to adding a new landscape means that I've conquered my biggest obstacle when it comes to gardening, myself. So the biggest mistake that I've made in my landscaping career, personally or as a professional, and it's on the personal side, is my pursuit of perfectionism has caused me to not plant when I should have planted all along. You know, it's the delay of just, my uncertainty,
The resistance.
Yeah, that plant could work well, but then again, so could that plant. And, and consequently, I end up planting nothing there when all along something beautiful could have been growing there. So,
And I have the exact opposite condition. I plant 4 times as much as what needs to be because I love all plants.
Right.
And then long term, I'm having to cut things out and prune things heavily and obtain a lot more maintenance practices than I would ever want to give a traditional homeowner.
So there's probably a good compromise there, a happy medium. Hopefully we found a happy medium with this landscape. And that leads me to a final thought. When it comes to landscaping and gardening, there are 2 words that you should never use. One is perfection, as in the pursuit of it, because you know what? That never really happens, and you just set yourself up for disappointment. And the other one is finished, as in, if I ever get my landscape finished. But that never really happens either. It's always an evolving process. Like here, we've planted over 200 trees and shrubs, and it barely looks like we've made a dent. But these awkward teenagers, as I like to describe them, will settle in and eventually they'll look beautiful. And I look forward to that. So it's the journey, it's not the destination. And keep that in mind. So do your homework, take your time, get help when you need it, and don't try to do it all at once. But if you'd like more information on the landscaping process, including my guide to 7 steps for planting success, we have that on our website under the show notes for this episode. The website address, that's the same as our show name. It's growingagreenerworld.com. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Joe Lamp'l, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World.